Welcome to this episode of Nuts and Bolts, our weekly ANZPL World of Tanks show. A very special show tonight. It was the last round of the regular season last Friday night. And we had some games, all results, all 3-1. So it's not let's 2-2 this week, it's let's 3-1. So that was really good to see. Not so good for some teams though, as the teams have now been finalised for the first round of the semi-finals coming on this Friday. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at some of the games. First up, we had Bulldogs and Conquerors. So you see the first map up was Sand River. The Bulldogs were on defence and they did get some early shots in, but Conquerors were able to isolate Dark and get that first kill, but Bulldogs still had a fair amount of HP there. Eventually Camo from Conquerors moved on to the cap, but AVP managed to get the kill there and Madhouse was still hidden away. Bulldogs did position well though, and they brought it back from being a tank early. That HP advantage really helped them there, and eventually moved on to a win on time defence, but they were looking very good there. Second round saw Conquerors on defence on Sand River there. Like early on, they were just positioning, few shots traded, but nothing too major going on there. Eventually though, Bulldogs had to push, didn't quite get there in the end though. They also ran out of time, just left their attack too late, and Conquerors took that one out on defence. So we got a 1-1 there happening at the moment. But the next round on Ghost Town, so with the Conquerors on attack, they did try and pull their old stunt of seeing them pull into that little corner bit there and try and protect the tanks to get the capture. They did work out fairly early on that wasn't going to work, so they stopped committing to that, which was actually good to see them change up, because in previous rounds they'd committed to that and waited until it was too late. They did move off, it wasn't quite to be their time right there, and the Bulldogs ended up winning that on tank elimination. So on the flip side there, Conquerors taking defence on Ghost Town there. Bulldogs did manage to push Goober off a hill that he was sitting on there and get a kill on Camo. Madhouse and Dark were able to get on hill and then bleed out Goober as well. And then all of a sudden the Bulldogs just pushed in, managed to get a quite decisive victory there on tank elimination, taking out the first series of round 7, 3-1 there. Moving on to game 2. Between AWST and Matilda. So this one to me was going to be the big one for the round. This was a top of the table clash for last week, although AWST were coming off 2 losses and Matildas were coming off 2 wins, so the momentum was definitely with Matildas. Early on though, in the first round on Himmelsdorf here, Matildas pushed onto 1 cap, but the AWST did manage to bleed them down quite significantly. You see here how quickly they went from 5 tanks to 3 tanks, and eventually dropped down to no tanks, with AWST taking a 5-2 tank advantage late in the game. But they learned from that. Geordie came in, the shot callers for the Matildas, and they just rolled around, well, like tanks. they just 5 tanks run around, took out Eugene, moved on to the next person, and managed to isolate the AWST players very well, and just had amazing focus fire. Like you can imagine 5 tanks bearing down on you. You got 5 versus 2 here. It was always gonna come out in the way of Matildas there, and Matildas did end up taking this round 2 on Himmelsdorf. On to so you can see here just the Matildas finishing off the Adelaide AWST there, and then we move on to the cliff defence. Same thing again, the Matildas just decided that their running in numbers worked so well last time that they were going to continue on, and they run. The AWST did sort of get a little bit wiser and tried to run away, but Geordie, I don't know what they put in his water there, but his shot calling was just on point. He wasn't in the first game and there was no decisive Matildas actions, but from game 2 to game 3, they just went for it. They moved with purpose. They moved it, and even though Camo did, Camo I think took a little bit of a fall down the hill there. This was in game 4. The Matildas just moving in numbers again, and took it right out of the Adelaide Action X there. And yeah, four versus 2 tanks, that's always going to be hard. Even though, you know, he did have a little bit of a one-on-one there, but then with another tank coming around the corner, Matildas were quite easy to finish that one off. And they also took out that round on tank elimination. So Matildas coming with 3 wins in a row into the finals, and Adelaide Action X taking 3 losses. So that wasn't so good, and we'll see how that works out for them when we have a look at the ladder a little bit later on, and we'll talk about who's made it into the finals. Round 3, Archers versus Sentinels. Start out on Prokhorovka here. Sentinels on defence. Rainbow did do a lot of scouting, but then Rainbow and Trax started trading shots. Fortunately, Trax did go down early, and Sentinels took a 4-2 tank advantage there. So they just played a bit better in the end. You can see at the moment, Archers have still got a fair number of their tanks left, but it didn't take long for the Sentinels to focus them down. See, they've still got about 1,000 HP advantage. This was always looking like, and a full tank, like a tank that hasn't even been hit yet, you know. So this was Sentinels pushing forward, and there you go. All of a sudden they're down to 2 tanks, and that was it. Sentinels went on defense. Move over to Archers on defense here. So the Sentinels did set up along the 9-0 line and went for the 2 flag capture there. But they did end up rotating over to the train line and move on to the 1 flag instead once they saw how the Archers were set up. Archers did start to bleed out Sentinels quite well and managed to get some resets onto Rainbow, who was trying to do some capturing for the Sentinels. Eventually, Archers took a win on defense there. Round 3 at Muravanka. Sentinels took some standard defensive positions, and I do remember thinking going into this, both Prokhorovka and Muravanka are like these maps more often than not end up in draws. So you know, the Sentinels did take up a really good defensive position, and just Archers tried to push in, but Sentinels kept bleeding the Archers, and eventually the Sentinels came away with a win on defense there. Moving on to the last round of this one. For a little bit of, you know, Archers threw everything in the kitchen sink in here. Dell brought in an FV4005 tank, and this was an artillery tank. This was deleting tanks in one shot. Sentinels were able to get rid of that reasonably early on, and Sentinels moved in on the cap, and eventually they did get a capture win there on the flag, which I wasn't expecting. I was fully expecting Archers to pull something off there, but they did get the win. So Sentinels pulling off a 3-1 win against the Archers on Muravanka and Prokhorovka, wasn't it? Yes. Game 4, last one for the night. Now, my very own Perth Panthers with their last-ditch attempt against the Scorpions, but the Scorpions did take home the only 4-0 win last week, so it was always going to be a big ask. There was a pretty early brawl. Like, this game was only 2 minutes 18 long, so it was over and done with pretty quick. There were trading shots for a while, but eventually the Scorpions just got the upper hand, and as soon as you get that sort of tank disadvantage there, it's very hard to come back from. Scorpions taking the first round on Cliff. Round 2, there was a bit more of an even matchup there. It took a little bit of extra time. There was a bit of a brawl in the mid. Panthers were able to take away a 4-3 tank advantage, but Scorpions with a little bit more health too. They did manage to peg it back to a 2v2 later in the round, but JS was getting some good resets and forced the Scorpions to chase it down, and he managed to get away, taking out round 2 for the Panthers there. Back on to Ghost Town now. Popular map. It was only a new map for this season, and it did get a fair run in the end. But the Scorpions set up well on their defensive efforts there, and it just took the Panthers too long to dig out JT. He was just tucked in behind a little hill there. They bled him out for too much. Eventually, Scorpions get it down to a 2v4 tank advantage, and managed to win there by taking out all of the Panthers' tanks. So then on to round 4, the last round for the regular season. for Season 2. Panthers on defence. JT manages to get some good angles on Dastardly and moved in for some attacks there. So that's JT from the Scorpions and Dastardly from the Panthers. Wasn't going well. Scorpions pushed on 2 flag, but then got some good focus fire and just went for the all-out attack. You can see here, they just surrounded the last Panthers player and got the kill, taking out that game 3-1 as well. Now on to the ladder. So we'll get to see the teams that are going through to the grand final here. We start with Melbourne Matildas, South Sydney Scorpions, North Sydney Sentinels and Brisbane Bulldogs all making their way into the finals. Interestingly, those three of those teams, the Scorpions, the Sentinels and the Bulldogs, were all finalists last year as well. The only new one is the Matildas. Unfortunately, Archers, they weren't able to hold on to that form that they had in the early part of the season with those 2 early wins. Ended up being the only 2 wins they got for the season. Finished the Season 2 with 3 losses in a row, which is... they needed to win that last game against the Matildas to stay in the finals, but unfortunately they weren't able to capitalise on their early success there. And rounding out the teams there, Action X was in 5th, Christchurch Conquerors in 6th, Archers and Panthers both down there in equal last place, with both having no wins. But coincidentally, our top 2 teams, the Matildas and the Scorpions, both finished the season undefeated. So that was quite impressive. Moving on to the play of the round, and I found it hard to go past the Matildas here in the game 2 of their round. They just rolled in numbers after being disorganised in the first one. It was just amazing to watch them moving with such purpose. Like they knew Eugene was dead, they were moving on, and that just started the steamrolling of the Adelaide Action X in that round. So that is my pick for play of the week. So let's talk about the Fantasy League. So this was the last round of the Fantasy League. Won't be continuing in the finals for the ANZPL. Bear in mind though, the ANZBL, the B League that they've got going, is still continuing with their Fantasy League, and they've still got a couple more rounds to go. So definitely, if you've been having fun with the Fantasy League, definitely jump on the B League Fantasy League too. Well, you can see there was some reasonably high points. Dark maxing out with 290.7 from the Bulldogs. I managed to have two of these guys in my team, but it wasn't enough to keep me in the top 20. I ended up dropping down to 24th, and didn't J-Rated let me know about that. That was, not so good. But congratulations to Prophet Tickle for winning the Fantasy League for Season 2. He won 10,000 in-game gold, as well as an Asus router and a HyperX headset. So that's an amazing little bit there that we've got. On to the rounds for next week. We have our first place Melbourne Matildas taking on the 4th place Brisbane Bulldogs. So that one's going to be an interesting game, that one. With the way Matildas have been playing lately, they've definitely romped at home. Three wins in a row they've had, so could that continue against the Bulldogs? I'll definitely be rating them, so that's going to be an interesting one to watch. And then we have the Sydney Derby, South Sydney Scorpions versus North Sydney Sentinels for Game 2. That one will also be an interesting... I reckon that's going to be my pick for Game of the Round, although I get the feeling on form, Scorpions might just edge out the Sentinels there. It's also worth noting that the games are moving from a best-of-4 format to a best-of-7 format, so there will definitely be a result in these games. There will not be any draws. So tune in from 6 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time on Friday to twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ. Have a watch there, see these two teams fight out. There's only 3 weeks left now, so this week we'll have the semi-finals. The week after that there will be the match for 3rd place. So the 2 losers from this Friday's games will go and play a 3rd place match. And then the week after that, it'll move the games from the Friday nights. It'll go to a Saturday, 22nd of May at Fortress Melbourne. That's right, a live, in-person grand final for World of Tanks. Winner to be showered with glory The losers to be booed until I can boo no more, to quote The Simpsons. No, we're going to be nice to everybody. Won't be booing this, but it's going to be a great 3 week. Only 3 weeks left. We've got to get in. We've got to see this. Want to see how it's all going. Get amongst it. Pick a team. I think I'm going to be following the Matildas in this one. I think they're my pick for taking it home. I think the grand final is going to be Matildas and Scorpions, and I think the way Matildas have been playing, they've just got the confidence, and I think they'll be able to take it out there. But let's not forget, Scorpions are coming off 2 wins as well, so not quite as much as what Matildas are, but wins are hard to come by this season, so it's going to be interesting to see it, and it's do or die now. There are no second chances, wins only, people. Let's go. But of course, we also have the ANZPL, or the B League that's going on at the moment. So on Monday nights, this is happening on twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ. Last Monday we had the Canberra Centurions versus the Wellington Wolverines. Wolverines took that home with a 3-1 win there. And then the Hellcats and the Hawthorn Hellcats and the Cairns Comets finishing with a 2-2 draw. So with the ladder now, we've got the Hellcats on top, then Wolverines, Comets and Centurions. So everybody's got some points. Centurions the only ones without a win. They've had 2 draws, but we should see some interesting matches coming up for them. They've got two weeks left. I think their rounds finish the week before the grand final. So if you want more World of Tanks action, tune in to see those games on Monday nights. Lastly, for tonight, we've got to have our tank fact. Our lovely tank fact. That didn't sound too good. Let's get that sound again. We've got to have a tank fact. Did you know tankers and tank drivers, tank crews, they're a little bit of a superstitious mob? And to that, did you know that apricots are not allowed on, near, or even to talk about around tanks? So apparently it started in World War II with the US Marines. I don't know why exactly. Apricots just became bad luck, so you're not allowed to talk about them anymore. And that's slowly been adopted by other tank crews around the place. So if you're ever near a tank, don't talk about apricots. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is another tank fact. So thank you so much for watching the show. Be very curious to see about the results for the semi-finals in the World of Tanks ANZ Premier League. So stay tuned, watch up, and then watch the grand final coming up live in Fortress Melbourne. They are not selling tickets. There are tickets available now because it's a ticketed event because they need to keep control of numbers. If you want to go, if you're in Melbourne, you want to have a look, have a crack at those tickets there and get to see the games live. It'd be amazing seeing an in-person live event. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you Friday night at twitch.tv/World of Tanks ANZ.